Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Kristin Majcher. I'm a senior correspondent and reporter here at The Block. Thanks so much for joining us today for this webcast on Web3 social. Really excited to have this conversation today. I'm joining everyone here from Bogota, Colombia, where I saw many of you at DevCon just in October, which was really fun to get to know everyone. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the topics for today and then introduce our panelists. So we're going to talk about Web3 social, which is a topic that even if you don't know about blockchain or crypto or Web3, I think we all have experience with social media networks and have a pretty good idea of how they function. So we're going to talk about the evolution of those social media networks today and really what Web3 is and how it can evolve these experiences that we're all familiar with. So today, you'll walk away with some knowledge about the differences between Web2 and Web3 social and what's driving this evolution and demand. We're also going to talk about the Web3 tech stack and what that means for the user experience. And then we're also going to talk about the future of the creator economy and what role Web3 plays in that, and how brands are using Web3 as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So first up, we have Christina Beltramini, and she's head of growth and partnerships at Aave Companies. So she works on partnerships across its suite of Web3 products, including Lens. Christina has a really interesting background, has worked in traditional finance at JP Morgan, also was an early employee at TikTok. So welcome, Christina. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I'm dialing in here from Basel, which has been a pretty crazy few days, but good, really interesting conversation, specifically around like creators and how Web3 can help empower them. So hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Do you have any quick takeaways from Art Basel? Any interesting trends you're seeing in Web3 that we should be keeping an eye on, just really quickly?
Yeah, I have seen some interesting conversations. I was speaking to some people in the traditional art world and trying to understand how they discover new talent. And what I did find really interesting is I actually use social media to find like new emerging artists. And so it was interesting for me to see the impact that social has in a more traditional space, in kind of an A&R capacity and discovery for new creators from galleries. So I thought that was really interesting and a lot of appetite here on the Web3 space in general. So that's really good to see, especially given, we are in a bear market. The fact that, the value add of this space is still, established and people understand it.
Great. Well, welcome, Christina. Next, we have Zaven Nahapetyan, who is working on a new protocol called Niche. And Zaven previously worked as a senior engineering manager at Facebook, working on topics including fundraising, charity, and voting initiatives. So Zaven, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about Niche and what you're working on now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. With Niche, we're trying to solve a lot of the problems we saw in Web2 social, which is, too many ads that people are sick of, ease of spreading misinformation, stale connections, people being afraid to post because both their coworkers and their parents and random people they don't even know might see that content. And we really feel like Web3 offers the sort of technological backbone to be able to solve a lot of these things and really divorce ourselves from ads and the issues that has caused. So we're looking at social media from the lens of 2022 rather than 10, 20 years ago when it was first being designed out in the Web2 way. And yeah, happy. I'm sure we'll get into the specifics of it more about this conversation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Zaven. And now we have Cyrus from Newman Capital. And so Newman Capital is a proprietary venture capital firm based in Asia, focused on Web3 and cutting edge technologies. Cyrus, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Newman?
Hey guys, can you guys hear me?
We got you.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Finally, I got a connection. So I'm super happy to be here. I'm Cyrus. I'm part of Newman Capital. We're based in Hong Kong. So midnight here in Asia, but I'm super happy to be part of this webinar to share about Web3 social, which is a vertical that get us very excited about, because when we talk about mass adoption of Web3, I think we actually think that social could be something huge, for the next wave of growth. So we've experienced something similar in gaming, and we think that social could be next. And I'm sure the rest of the panelists here will have their takes on social, and I'd love to share more about our views and why we think that social it's bullish. It's going to be drive the growth as next wave. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Cyrus. And where are you joining us today from, Cyrus? Where are you based?
Oh, yeah. I'm in Hong Kong right now. So majority of our team is actually in Hong Kong. So we have very strong connections in Asia, including countries like Southeast Asian countries, and as well as in Japan, Korea as well. And we're also expanding too. So next year, Q1, we're going to launch our office in the US. So we're going to have a partner station in San Francisco. We're going to have some local staff there as well. So I guess there's going to be some chance for us to meet in the US in the future.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks, Cyrus. So let's get into our conversation. I already see some people in here in the chat talking, which is great. So please put down your questions if you have any during our talk. So let's just start off with the basics about what the difference is between Web 2 and Web 3. Clearly, Zaven and Christina, you've worked on really well-known social media platforms, Facebook and TikTok. So let's just start and visualize the difference a little bit between Web 2 and Web 3 and what this evolution looks like. So maybe Christina, could you start off and just tell us a little bit about what's the main difference between Web 2 and Web 3 social, and how would you describe the main potential benefits of Web 3 in terms of social media networks?
I think to simplify, like just Web 2 versus Web 3, there's so much that gets thrown out there about both of them and a lot of confusion, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's ownership and choice. So whether that's for your financial assets and sovereignty and DeFi, which, the Aave companies works on as well through its involvement in the DAO of the Aave protocol. But now in social media, what we're starting to learn is that everything that we do online, our social profile, our data, that also has value. And so we actually don't own that. Every day we're making money for the likes of Facebook and TikTok. We're doing work for them and we're not getting any of the upside or choice in what we're able to use, because we're limited to only 2 or 3 big platforms and don't have choice around like the innovation in the space, ability to move between those platforms, and really own everything that we do online. And so we think of this collectively as social capital, similar to financial capital. And I think the easiest way is financial sovereignty and digital sovereignty is the way I think through it.
Okay, interesting. And Zaven, do you have anything to add to that, especially from your time at Facebook and seeing Facebook evolve? Do you agree with that, or anything else you want to add about?
I agree strongly with that. I think the other aspect of it as well is how easy finance and financial transactions can be within the Web3 space, because Web3 started with cryptocurrencies, with it's all sort of baked into this very native financial model. And what that does is it unlocks new ways for creators to monetize their communities or sell goods, or moderators of a community to get paid for the work that they do in maintaining a healthy, thriving community. And so the benefit of that is it allows for people to be rewarded for the work that they do, and allows new ways for people to make money off of their work, which then realigns those incentives in a healthy way. Because in Web 2 social media, the people are the product, right? And everything you do is not benefiting you, it's benefiting this corporation. And in Web 3, by bringing in those financial components, allowing people to make money off of the work they do and either creating content or building communities, then they're no longer the product. Actually, they benefit from the stuff that they do rather than the company benefiting.
Okay, great. And Cyrus, do you have anything to add to that? How would you describe the difference between Web 2 and Web 3?
Well, as an investor, we always look for places that have the biggest upside and where that it shows the strongest growth, right? So for the traditional social media platforms right now, we see kind of the popularity and the growth among those existing platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. They're kind of declining, right? The room for innovation for those platforms, it's kind of limited, and I think that's where Web3 can comes in, to bring some, new, new.
Oh, it looks like we might have lost Cyrus there in the connection. That's okay. We'll move on. Zaven and Christina, I'm curious, was there anything about working on Web 2 social platforms that inspired you to move into Web 3 in terms of some of the biggest pain points or challenges? We did talk about the creator economy a little bit, but what else would you add to that? Christina, can you tell us a little bit about how you were inspired to move into Web 3 social?
Yeah, definitely. Back to the ownership and the importance of that. There's a few things here. So when I was at TikTok, the most asked question I got asked from creators was, "Can you help get me unbanned?" So they would actually reach out to me and find me on Instagram, because I had mentioned on my Instagram profile that I worked at TikTok, and the fact that the bureaucracy of these larger companies and the ability where they can shut you down tomorrow based on black box moderation policies, but could impact a creator's livelihood because you're shutting down their access to their audiences, you're removing all their content and their hard work. For me, that's a huge risk as we think about the creator economy being, a next pillar in the economy, and these new content creators that are building businesses off these platforms. And so that, for me, it's a critical pain point that needs to be solved. And when you have an open social graph that you own, and you have your followers and your profile all in your wallet, that's all within your control, and no one can take that away from you. I also saw with a lot of the, crypto creators on Twitter that wanted to start using TikTok, they were actually pretty frightened about joining a new platform and having the whole cold start issue and not being able to transport their network from Twitter over to TikTok, or at least have some form of understanding of who of their Twitter followers were also on TikTok. And so, that ownership of your social graph and portability and analytics and being able to have those direct access points is really important, as well as, being able to secure your content and your followers yourself.
And one point, if I may add to that, is censorship and worrying about your content being taken down is not just for people who are doing bad things, because a lot of people say, okay, like that's not really important for me, I don't really need to worry about that. But actually, a lot of people's accounts get taken down for really innocuous reasons. Groups get taken down for really innocuous reasons. And one example that I like to use, Chris, my co-founder, he's an avid collector of Star Wars memorabilia and figurines and things like that. And every once in a while, these large groups with I'm talking tens of thousands of people, some of them doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in commerce, selling Star Wars merchandise, get automatically shut down because a movie blaster prop or something resembles a weapon. Wow. And so the computer vision algorithm flags that as weapons trafficking. The whole thing is taken down. Of course, there's no way to do anything about that. And so if your livelihood is based on, commerce, if you're a professional collector, dealer, whatever, that's a huge financial hit, right? And so for us, it's also about safeguarding people like that and use cases like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting and really good points. Cyrus, do you agree with that as an investor? Do you agree that these are important things driving people's interest in Web3? What do you think about some of the new protocols that you're seeing? What's interesting for you as an investor?
Yeah, I think you guys just mentioned a lot of problems that existing in Web2 social, including censorship, including the ownership problem. And I think, on top of that, I think like security, it's also another issue, because like traditional social platforms, they're all like very centralized. That could be a risk, for some people. And I think misinformation, it's kind of another problem. You see a lot of like fake news, false informations all over social media right now. But in a Web3 social environment, I think that could still be a problem, but potentially it could be solved by things like digital identity and other decentralized solutions as well. So I think that could be an innovative way to kind of solve this misinformation problem. As investors, on an application level, to be honest, I still think that most of the social applications out there, like Web3 social applications in the market right now, still kind of premature. They're either couldn't find a right product market fit, or not very easy for existing Web2 or non-crypto native people to use. That could be a problem about the design of the product. That could be the problem of the whole user journey. Maybe some part of that is because of the technology, because not just in social, but in some, you see the same problem in some other DeFi protocols as well, because basically the whole user journey is not quite pleasant. If you don't know anything about crypto, basically you won't able to use any DeFi protocols. I think similar things that we've been seeing in Web3 social these days right now. So that's why we think that most of the applications out there, they're still kind of premature, but we're eager to see more innovative applications come up. And of course, infrastructure layer is another thing. Of course, like Lens Protocol, it's one of the pioneers in the market, but of course we like to see different players come out. But again, I think the whole narrative is still kind of early, and I think everybody's kind of figuring out how this should work. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And that brings us to our next topic, really, which is about the technology and the tech stack. So maybe Zaven, you are a coder, you have a technical background at Niche. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the Web3 tech stack looks like and how decentralization is achieved? I mean, this is a huge topic. We could talk about it for hours, but maybe if we could just drill it down a little bit and talk about the tech stack for Web3. How does that compare to what you were working on before at Facebook or other companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to Cyrus's point, I think the more we can hide the technology, the more successful the products will be. Mm-hmm. And a lot of builders in the Web3 space are just so excited about this. And so they really want to put the technology front and center. And actually, this prevents a lot of people from using these things because they log on. They're like, I don't know what MetaMask is. What is a wallet? What's an NFT, right? And it becomes just so overwhelming. And so even though the technology is really, really cutting edge, I think we want to make the experience, and that's certainly a philosophy we have at Niche, as familiar and intuitive as possible to someone that has no idea what these things are. And so for us, even though we use NFTs extensively, we actually don't call them NFTs. On our app, it's a membership card, and and then people think, okay, like my gym membership, my in-person club membership, whatever, that seems a little more familiar. But in terms of the specific technology, it's really about taking those core pieces of your identity and different types of things that you do and putting them on different decentralized protocols. So layer 1 blockchains or layer 2 solutions, whatever. And what that means specifically is, let's say with Niche's example, you are in different communities, and membership in these communities actually lives on NFTs. And so once we have built, this open protocol where there are other apps that you can go to, you can take that with you because you can show in this way, on these computers that don't just live in Facebook's data centers, but are actually hosted by thousands of people all over the world, you can show that that belongs to you and that is tied to your identity. So I know that's a little bit in the weeds, and maybe I'll use an example to illustrate that. Like my co-founder, Chris, he's one of the original co-founders of Tinder. And so naturally dating is the thing that comes to our mind. And if you imagine an app where you have all these different interests, right? On Niche, you might be involved in baking clubs and coding, you might be in a co-founders group, crypto group, whatever. That actually paints a really rich, multi-dimensional, colorful picture of you as a person that is excellent for dating. And so if there's another app built on the same sort of like layer one protocol, then you can just log in with your profile. And instead of having to export your data, instead of having to do any of that stuff, it magically just knows all these things about you as a person. And so we can imagine a world where there's all these different apps that you hold the keys to, and you can just log on and bring your identity and your authentic self and all of your interests and all of your hobbies and all the posts that you have, all the creators you follow, you can bring all of that to these other things because of this tech.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point on the user experience and having that at parity with existing social apps in Web 2 is what is going to unlock Web 3, right? Because we have this really powerful underlying technology that can help creators monetize better, gives us portability, and can allow for a lot of creative use cases that the Web 2 infrastructure just can't build. But we'll never get there if we're unable to do the basics right. And we're unable to unlock that value. So what we say at Lens Protocol is always that where value goes, audiences will flow, right? And so the idea is we are still early in this journey, but the fundamental infrastructure and what it can unlock, from a user experience perspective longer term is just huge. And you think about it as simple as, you can actually unbundle all of Web 2 social in a Web 3 environment. So right now, if you go on TikTok, they control every component of your experience, from the front end, from your social graph, from the algorithm, from the moderation. With Web3 social, you can actually unstack all of that. And I like to think of it, an a la carte experience. I can choose one front end. I can then choose a community that I believe in for their moderation to filter the content on that profile. I can choose an algorithm. May the best algorithm win. If I want to be paid as a user, I can opt into that. And I can opt my data in, but at the end of the day, I'm getting paid. And, an intermediary is not getting a 90% take rate there. And with complete lack of visibility on where my data is also being used longer term. And so I think that's very interesting. And then the ways we're able to showcase ourselves in Web3 social will be much richer because it is open source software. You can go back to the MySpace days, like being able to really curate your profile, showcase your identity in really interesting ways because all of this data is portable. Proof of humanity, being able to prove you're a human and not a bot on your profile. Right now, someone can steal your handle and copy you, and people won't have any clue. Like people were even trading verification check marks on Twitter, right? And selling accounts with check marks and then rebranding them. In Web3 social, you'll actually have like proper proof of identity validators, ways to bring in off-chain data on-chain while keeping it private. It's just going to become a very, very, very interesting space. And we're going to have richer experiences as a result.
That's really interesting, Christina. Can you give us any more color on how people are using Lens Protocol? Zaven was talking about Niche and how they're connecting people through groups and of shared interests and things like that. How are people using Lens? I've seen people, for example, on Twitter, even posting to Twitter from Lens. How are people using Lens, and what do those use cases look like right now? Just curious if you can give us any examples.
Yeah. We call that the vampire attack, right? Where you seed Web3 into Web2 through neat dual posting widgets. The core thing people need to understand about Lens is it's a protocol. It's not an application. And so Lens empowers developers to build different applications on top. Right now, we have around 100 applications that have been built on Lens, but I would say there's probably about 5 that are consumer ready. These applications at the moment, similar to what we were saying, like getting to Web 2 parity, skeuomorphic. So what you'll see we have LensTube, which is a YouTube equivalent. You'll have LensStar, which is a Twitter equivalent. So really kind of starting at the base is what builders are doing, and then we're going to grow from there. But right now, the way podcasters are using Lens, for example, is they'll mint, and we should definitely do this, the block after this call, they'll post their podcast on LensTube. The beauty of Lens is distribute once, distribute everywhere. That podcast will automatically appear on any other front end that enables video content. So it will then appear directly on that podcaster's Lens stuff. So they get additional reach. And then it will also appear on music NFT streaming services that are integrated with Lens called Ooh La La. And so the idea is the podcaster just needs to do one action, and they have access to potentially 3 different audiences on 3 different applications, which also opens up 3 different ways to have your content curated within those applications. So you really have like a compounding of audience reach. So I think, that's the most interesting, because right now podcasters have to go and upload on Spotify, then upload on YouTube. There's no real way to just get immediate distribution effects. So that's a really neat way. The other cool one is Lens in its smart contract functionality has a notion of this concept called a mirror. And a creator was just messaging me today saying how much they enjoy using it. But right now in Web2 social, the concept of a curator as a creator really doesn't exist, because there's no economic framework that really helps them actually become a creator for curating, right? You have to go and work for Spotify, or you have to go and work at a gallery. And so the idea is that the mirror functionality is a referral fee. So curators can actually get paid for amplifying on Web3 social. So I could pick up, a podcaster's what they posted on Lens and mirror it on my profile. And if that podcaster has opened up monetization options, or a way for someone to tip them directly, or to be able to actually collect that podcast and set a fee, I could actually earn potentially, like 10% or whatever that creator has set as a curator. So, people are using Lens to become a different type of creator, being a curator or an amplifier.
Okay. That's really great color. Cyrus, do you have any thoughts on these approaches? What is interesting for you as you hear about?
For us, one of the things that get me excited is, in Web3 social, is not just the technology is decentralized. The function of social, it's also decentralized, because right now you see on Facebook, basically you put everything on Facebook, right? No matter it's of pictures or your some of your thoughts, your articles, your short videos, your basically everything, you put it on your Facebook. Maybe you use TikTok for short form video, for long term long format video. Maybe you use YouTube, some tweet. You probably use Twitter as well. But it's kind of still very centralized, from a function perspective. But in Web3 social, everything is very decentralized. You have mirrors just for writings. You have something else just for pictures. You have another application just for videos, and there are hundreds and thousands of combinations of all that, and that's kind of unlocks the composability of whole at a whole new level, because in that way you're able to unlock or create a new business model that never exists in Web2 social. No matter it's for content creator or for those who operate as a application or even infrastructure. So that's kind of very exciting for us. And the second thing is that I think the Web3 social were able to really able to deliver what community driven is. So because in Web3 social, DAO could be something very powerful, and then I think that's something also you're never able to experience in Web2 in the Web2 social space. So community driven things like DAOs or whatever, and then the composabilities and that new kind of business model or new kind of revenue models. I think that's still a very long way to go. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to chime in there quickly. I love what Niche is doing. And I agree with Cyrus around like new monetization models, because right now it's all about reach. It's about clickbait. It's about numbers. Like, I think Web3 social, with the unlock of like this depth and monetization, you'll be able to actually have deeper, closer relationships that are more authentic. But those creators will then be able to actually monetize as well through all of these new community-based tools that Web3 opens up. So I'm a big fan of Niche in that respect.
Thank you.
And building on that, Zaven, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how does that monetization work right now on social media platforms, and just tell us a little bit about what is the creator economy, because we keep hearing so much about it and how Web3 fits into that. So what is the creator economy, and how could Web3 potentially improve the situation for artists or musicians or creators who are seeking to monetize their content?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately that improves it for everybody, because, Cyrus mentioned the issues with misinformation on platforms like Facebook and Twitter. And actually, one of the things I worked on, during my many years on the social impact team there, is trying to stop misinformation, because we will see a post is shared that is clearly, some false article, clickbait, whatever. And then someone reads just the headline just from the preview, and then reshares it without actually clicking into it or doing any research. And then someone else reshares and someone else reshares that. And, I'm sure everyone's heard of 6 degrees of separation. All you need is just 5 reshares to get from one person to just about every other person on the internet. And the reason why this is such a problem on platforms like Facebook is because the algorithms incentivize that and actually encourage that, because the more something is reshared, the more content is created, the more people consume ads, and ultimately the more money the company makes. And the more viral or divisive a piece of content is, the more people comment on it, and then again that leads to more impressions, more engagement, more ad revenue. And Web3 social is really about getting rid of that and finding new ways for people creating content to make money. And so this isn't, empowering creators is really important, but actually there is huge societal implications to doing this, because we're moving away from a model of, hey, let's get people to spend as much time on their phones as possible. Let's get this content seen as much as possible. Let's get divisive content in front of as many eyeballs as possible, which is leading, to election interference. It's leading to fake news, leading to all sorts of issues. More towards, hey, let's allow people who produce interesting things or build interesting communities to make money and be rewarded off of that. And actually, I think one of, the worst things that happen to the internet is this interconnection of every single person in the world and the ability for things to spread virally really, really quickly. And actually, if we think about how interactions work in real life, it's about finding certain groups of people. That's really like where, I feel like color is added into conversations, into social dialogue, whether that's your family or your coworkers or people who share the same hobbies. And so with Niche, it's about moving more towards that. And so concretely, it's about letting people sell, if you're a creator creating music or photographer taking pictures, whatever, allowing people to sell that really in a really easy way. And then allowing people to, tap into their closest fans. And so having these people support them for the content that they're producing, whether that's through exclusive events or chat threads or whatever else. And really just unlocking all the ways we can think of for people who are doing stuff to then make money off of that. I think Cyrus also mentioned DAOs, which are, decentralized autonomous networks. These are communities of people run by smart contracts. So pieces of code that automatically execute certain rules. And that, again, gets really, really interesting and allows so many ways to solve some of these Web2 problems when you think about communities, because you can do things like moderating. You can do things like electing new admins. You can have people, when they join a community, to pitch in some amount of money that goes into shared treasury that people then vote on how to use to make the group better, or to organize in-person events, or to reward the people who are putting a lot of time into running these things. And so, again, it's just more examples of how the tech can sort of solve some of these problems and actually reward people for doing good, rather than just showing people really divisive content.
Yeah. And Christina, I'm curious, I know you've worked a lot with musicians, especially at TikTok. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, the reason why we don't have models that allow for like being able to understand your fans is because data is siloed. We creators only understand the data that TikTok decides to give them, that Spotify decides to give them. There's no open data. And so when we think about Web3 social, there's obviously going to be the conversation about data that shouldn't be on chain and should be private, but should be readable on chain. But at least the basic primitives will be on chain and public. So I would think of Web3 social as well as an open database for creators. So creators can finally understand like, hey, who are my top 1,000 fans? Right. And I should be focusing on these guys and building deeper relationships with them in the technology versus just producing content and getting content fatigue, because like right now I'm only being prioritized and paid for reach and likes and comments. And so the reason why we haven't seen those models is just because they don't have that data. And you can't build tools that will help creators build deeper relationships with their fans if everything is siloed. And for me, I think for musicians in particular, they are the most disenfranchised creators of all, because they not only have the issues of Web3 social, but they then have the music industry, which is a whole another conversation of how the blockchain could potentially support them. And so, but from their perspective, even just getting the top 1,000 fans, right, because they're not getting paid on Spotify, again, that's also another platform that's prioritized for like quantity over quality. So I'm particularly excited for creators and even for myself, right? I was on Taicho's, I got my Spotify Wrapped yesterday. I was Taicho's like 2% of streamers, but I have no way of really connecting with him in a deeper way as a fan, or even having him know that, other than if I like post on Twitter and say, hey, Taicho, I'm like in your top 2% of fans for the second year in a row, and trying to get his attention that way. He has no way of knowing.
That's really interesting. And I think it's really interesting to talk about how this can impact individual creators, but I think it's also interesting to talk about companies and brands. So I have a question for Cyrus, because you're doing a lot of work in Asia. We just saw that Animoca Brands is reportedly planning a fund of up to 2 billion, for example, to invest in metaverse companies, which sounds really big. So what are companies thinking about Web3 and moving a little bit away from the individual creators and talking about the benefits for them? How are companies looking at this, and brands, whether it be looking at acquisitions in the Web3 space or maybe connecting with their customers? How should we look at this through the lens of companies?
I think that things are a little bit different here in Asia, I guess, because like most of the big corporates here, for example, in Hong Kong, I think metaverse, it's kind of a buzzword for them. If you are not in Sandbox, you're not up to date. It's almost like that. So you've been seeing mega banks, you've been seeing insurance companies, you've been seeing other big financial institutions. They're all stepping into a metaverse, trying to have a virtual shop or virtual something, for example, in Sandbox or some other major metaverses. But that's kind of the approach for those big brands, not just from a financial sector, but also in some other consumer sectors as well. You've been seeing big clothing brands that they have they have their virtual outfit on their virtual avatars, but at the same time you see that see the real clothes there like in the shop. So that's kind of the approach. But I would say that's a good start. At least it's better than nothing, right? But but go back to show. I guess that at some point they all these efforts were able to drive to some degree of adoption in terms of social, because once you have something in the metaverse, and the next step is the interaction between the brands and the customers, right? That's where social comes in. So And for me, I think social, it's a very broad terms, right? So when we talk about Web3 social, it's not just things like a Web3 version of Facebook or Web3 version of Twitter. I think it also could be something like a combination of some existing protocols with an adoption or expansion into some like add-on social elements on it. For example, let's say Uniswap. Okay, they just announced their the new NFT marketplace, right? So let's say if there's a small social function within Uniswap, and when I follow my friends on Uniswap, and then I saw them, they've been, buying several NFTs, and I'll be like, why they're buying those NFTs, right? And then I would just text my friends and say, oh, hey, why are you buying these NFTs? And then, I think things like that could be, very interesting. Same as in the token trading world, right? When I see my friends.
Oh, it looks like maybe we lost Cyrus again, unfortunately. Cyrus, are you there? I think we lost you, Cyrus. It's okay. We'll come back to Cyrus. I wanted to close with one more question and then take a look at some of the questions that the audience has asked. So when wrapping all of this up, I do want to get back to something that Cyrus mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the customer experience and user experience of these platforms. Mm-hmm. And it seems like to some extent there is a trade-off. If you're introducing decentralization and some of these benefits around privacy that we've been discussing, the user experience is going to be different. We're all used to signing up for social media, putting in some information, having a password, maybe some two-factor authentication, and then that's it. But with some of these new platforms in Web3, it's a different process for signing up, connecting a wallet, et cetera. So I just wanted to ask, Zaven, what do you think are the trade-offs when it comes to some of these benefits of Web3 versus the consumer experience? And what do we know about, I guess you could say, the average user? To what extent will they go through some extra hoops or steps to sign up for Web3?
They most likely won't.
They won't.
Like majority of people. And so that's why for us, we need to make the sign up as simple as possible. And so for us, it really is, connect your Google or Facebook, which I get a kick out of. And then and then we create a custodial wallet for them that then if they want to, have more ownership, they learn a bit more about crypto, they can export to their own, they can export their keys and take more control over that. And when someone invites you to a club, you don't need to know what your wallet address is or any of that stuff. They just send you a link or, click on Instagram story or something. And that automatically mints the NFT and deposits it in your wallet, which is probably custodial. And so it's really, really, if we want this to be successful, if we want people to actually use it, like the 3 billion people that use traditional social media, we cannot be adding additional layers of complexity because people just won't get it. And then in terms of the user experience of the product itself, I think a lot of people are taking existing things and then Web3ifying it. And it's really not enough because, again, most people are, they're not that informed. They don't really understand the benefits. And so I think the next successful Web3 product, and certainly within social, isn't going to be a clone of existing product. It's going to be something that holds, on its own and that actually solves some new problems, that introduces some new functionality, that does things that even without all the Web3 stuff, it is actually like useful and catchy and people like. And so I think, people's sort of requirements are incredibly high. And this is also why I think there hasn't been a really sticky product, because it's something we're seeing ourselves. In order to make a compelling Web3 app, we have like 20 years of catching up to do with existing ones. And really the like minimum viable product is not that minimum. You need really good messaging with reactions. You need a feed. You need ways to curate your profile. You need some concept of following people and groups and whatever, professional security. And so there's just a ton of work to do to build something that is snappy, is innovative, and has that user experience that'll get people to stay. And then realize like, oh my God, all this Web3 stuff adds these benefits. rather than trying to assume that Web3 will be enough to get them in the door in the first place.
I agree. And I do want to caution one thing, though. We need to create products that have a good user experience, but we cannot compromise on decentralization.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that with, fake DeFi, with FTX and everything that's happened there. Decentralization is important, and we cannot compromise on the user experience and have social products that are only halfway there, because then, we potentially risk similar things to what we saw in DeFi as well, but with people's social data, which is extremely sensitive.
Okay, and talking about that, I want to bring in now some questions from the audience. So we have a question here from John, who asks, the ability to have your identity on chain is great, but how can we solve for privacy? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting new emerging technologies in this space with ZKs. So the ability to have your data off chain, but it is read on chain. But at no point is it ever on chain and public. And so this whole area of the Web3 landscape is currently being innovated on and very, very early. But I would caution people as well, when starting to use Web3 social products, to always be mindful of what you're putting on chain at the moment. And it might mean that the experiences aren't yet as rich as Web 2 because it doesn't have the same amount of data to feed into different algorithms and product development there.
Okay. And then we have another question too. This one might be for Zaven. It's from CB. It says, hi, you all nodded about a digital ID being a way to work with false info. Could you please explain that a little bit? So going back to this topic of misinformation.
Yeah, I think I can speak to sort of the incentive side of it, and then Christina, you might be a better person to talk about the ID side of it. But I think if we can prevent ads from being the way, like the absolute most important thing, then that will really solve for a lot of misinformation, because then the companies and the products will not be highly promoting things, and instead will people will be rewarded for creating content that people actually like rather than content that spreads virally. And so the biggest issue with misinformation is not that people are sharing false things, is that people are sharing false things that are then seen by millions of people really, really quickly. And so that is the problem that I think Web3 can help solve.
And we are relying on these big Web 2 companies, right, to moderate and police that. And when you decentralize that aspect, and one interesting innovation that we recently launched on Lens Protocol was Cultivator DAO. And so a group of individuals that came together to form a DAO, right, who is actually tasked with moderating and being able to filter through. Right now it's spam and kind of those early internet problems, but soon you'll start to see different community groups come together, and you'll be able to choose whether or not you want to apply their filter, and you trust that community, and they will have certain credibility, and you'll have a completely new industry of moderators that is disattached to a bigger, like in Web 2, where you have like independent incentives, right? And it will remove those misaligned incentives, because right now misinformation goes viral, it spreads, it makes money. And that's all in the interest of the platform that controls the entire vertical stack.
Okay, great. We have another question coming in from Dorian, who asks, content being written in the chain, what about the right to be forgotten in the future, especially regarding social media? That could be a no-go for a lot of users. Does anyone have thoughts on this question?
Yeah, it's a really, really important thing. And I think something that not enough people are asking, because people are really excited about this idea of like, oh my God, all aspects of my personality are on chain. I can take it with me wherever I go. But of course, we as humans evolve. And certainly when I look at the things I posted when I first got Facebook in 2005, I'm really, really embarrassed by it. And like, God forbid,
aren't we all? I mean,
lives on chain. And so, to Christina's point, you need to understand right now how some of these technologies work, what sort of privacy measures they have. The tech is really cutting edge, and you can actually have stuff be on chain but not publicly accessible. There's even models being explored right now where you can kind of grant access. Maybe there's a different app or use case or something that you as a person can control whether it can see that information, but you also have the right to revoke it or somehow remove that. And so just because it's on chain or even off chain through ZKs doesn't mean that it will always be visible. And like there are ways to get rid of it. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of really naive developers and really naive users who are really excited to just put absolutely anything and everything on chain and tie that to their real identity. That is not a smart move, in my opinion.
One thing I will say that gives me hope is that I think generations that weren't excited like us, that didn't go through Facebook and put everything on chain, they were just born with Facebook existing. They actually want less online than our generation when it was a novelty. So I think they have more of a kind of skeptical eye when using even Web2 socials with like anon culture and the younger generation. So we're seeing trends generally around that because we have experienced so much misuse of our data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of data, I want to add on a little bit. Because when we talk about decentralized social media platforms, I think a decentralized storage of data, it's kind of still, is an area kind of still very under discussed. I don't see a very viable solution, right now, in terms of a decentralized data storage for social media. There's actually something else in the market, but I'm not exactly sure how they're going to fit in, the social media applications. So I think, I don't know. Yeah, I think like data storage, how to manage those data, in a decentralized fashion, I think it's still an area that we need more exploration. Yeah.
Okay, great. It looks like we have one more question from the audience. And I think this one would be for you, Christina. Could I create and make money across protocols with a single profile? Could I have a video account on Lens protocol and on another Web3 protocol without having two different accounts? So this topic of different accounts and how all of this works. Any thoughts on that?
That's exactly how Lens protocol works. So you can, and for me, it was very surreal when we first had like the initial products on Lens to be able to go and like flow between different applications, right? And different media type applications. And right now it's an open fire hose, but even down the road, you'll be able to actually restrict what certain parts of your follower graph can access different applications, because right now I wouldn't want my entire follower graph to be following me on Twitter, but also on LinkedIn. So you'll be able to actually segment and apply restrictions around that too, while not compromising on having the same account across different apps.
And that portability of data is really mind blowing. And even though I've been building this for a little bit, I kind of had my same like light bulb moment of like, oh my god, like this actually works the way I think it works. When I was demoing Niche to somebody, and he clicked on his link, he accepted the NFT, but he's very skeptical, and he's like, okay, let me double check this. And so on his phone, he opened up his wallet, like a separate Near wallet, and the NFT was actually there. And so the ability that you can do something in one app and then seamlessly that data can exist or be accessed from a different app is really, really what this is all about, in that it's not just siloed in one warehouse and one database, but actually is open and you can take it with you to whatever application you go is pretty mind-blowing, I think.
And for brands too, right? Because you can immediately get network effects. So if you integrated with Lens, for example, you could get network effects from someone who's following on one platform, but you actually have that follower data then translating to your platform, and it brings those network effects that are happening elsewhere within the ecosystem directly onto your platform too. So that's really neat.
Okay, great. And then finally, I want to wrap up. It's officially December 1st, which is crazy, but here we are about to start 2023. Looking ahead at the next year, what are you most excited about in Web3 social? Obviously, we can't predict the future, but what kind of trends do you see being really big in the next year? And what are you going to be focusing on as you continue to develop these protocols? Maybe Zaven, can you tell us what you're excited about for the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing I'm excited about is our product launch. So we're going to start opening it up early Q2.
Okay.
And actually getting out of private beta. We've had a few thousand people join our wait list. And so, we're now actually letting them do that. And then I think actually this is kind of a larger trend in that these things take a long time to build. And so I'm sure we're not the only product or the only protocol that's going to be releasing major features next year. And so I think 2023 is really going to be a year of Web3 social taking off and start seeing mass adoption.
Okay. Cyrus, what do you think? What are the big trends for next year?
I've been seeing things like digital identity. I think that narrative's kind of taking off. And of course, DID, and also some probably new like wallet solution. I would say maybe a combination of both. Also, I would love to see more applications that were able to utilize things like Zaven tokens. I think that's something will get me excited. Yeah.
Awesome. And Christina?
I'll keep it quick. I hope to see more of these like net new models, social models, that unlock the power of the blockchain rather than just kind of like replicating, because I think that'll get us kind of like further and further towards mainstream adoption. I think to what Cyrus said, interesting innovation around at the wallet level and the onboarding level is core to even get people into the funnel. But I hope in parallel, we're building out products so that when that time comes, when they're in the funnel, they have that light bulb moment. Whatever it may be for their creator type, but they say, wow, okay, I can't, this is a completely different experience than I would get, say using Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So I'm excited for those models.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much. We're actually wrapping up our hour of talk about Web3 social. This was a great conversation. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today in the audience, as well as our panelists. And this will be available after the talk. So we'll be posting it on social at the block. So stay tuned for that. If you want to replay this conversation or share it with your friends, it'll be available after. So thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.